With the third quarter of the season in the books, it's time to grade the Buffalo Bills' performance to this point, and we're focusing in on the defense and special teams today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Well, folks, yesterday we examined the Buffalo Bills offense. We graded it. And today we're going to do the same for the defense and the special teams. However, there are two significant pieces of news regarding the Buffalo Bills that I want to address right at the beginning of the show. And the first one is involving Von Miller, who was yesterday facing an arrest warrant for an alleged domestic violence incident in Dallas involving his pregnant girlfriend. He wound up turning himself in last night and posted bail. The league and the Bills both released statements stating that they are gathering information, they're aware of the situation, and will offer no additional comment at this time. Obviously, the first concern here is with the woman and the baby, and that they are okay. Reports indicate that she was treated for some minor injuries. As for the football side of things, obviously Von Miller not been a positive asset to the team this year, struggling to come back from the injury and make any sort of impact. And a lot of concerns about what he can offer this team, and now those concerns are even bigger. As far as the contract goes, it's not a good situation for the Bills. They're pretty locked in on Von Miller for the next couple of seasons. However, if he is suspended by the league, that would void the guaranteed money on his contract. And so that would actually represent a big cap savings for the Bills should that all go down. But obviously, this is all very early in this process. The news is still relatively fresh, and there's a lot more to learn about this entire situation. The other piece of information that's big is Tim Graham of The Athletic reported that his sources, and he certainly indicated in the story that they are very close sources with direct knowledge of Terry Pegula and his relationship with Sean McDermott. Tim Graham says there's zero chance that the Bills will fire Sean McDermott after this season. And so I think we've had some worthwhile conversations about the merits of that being a possibility. But as we've all, I think, at least I have, thought that probably isn't the case that Terry Pegula is going to fire Sean McDermott. And so I think it's probably smart for us to move forward, thinking about Sean McDermott being the head coach of this team and not really investing a whole lot of energy into discussing replacement options, because it doesn't sound like he's going to be replaced. Zero chance. It was a very straightforward report, and it aligns with what a lot of us have been suspicious about. All right, let's talk about this Bills defense and special teams. Defensively, they're still doing pretty good when it comes to not allowing a lot of points, only allowing 18.9 points per game this season, and they're only allowing 320 yards per game this season. And that 18.9 points per game allowed is sixth best in the NFL. So the Bills are not allowing many points to be scored. I think there's more situational issues to talk about within how teams are scoring on them and when teams are scoring on them. So let's look at the pass defense. We'll look at the numbers, talk about what's going well, where it can be better, then we'll give it a grade. Important numbers here. Yards per game, passing yards per game. The Bills are allowing 196 passing yards per game on average. That's under 200. That's outstanding. They're allowing 5.7 yards per play. The passer rating against the Bills is 88.6. That's been a number that's gone up throughout the course of the season. The first four games, 66.4. The second four, 85.4, now up to 88.6. So we're trending in a wrong direction there. And a big reason why is touchdowns. The Bills have now given up 16 touchdown passes this year, and that's a massive, massive jump. Through the first 8 games of the season, the Bills allowed 8 passing touchdowns. In the last 4, they've allowed 8 to make it 16 for the year. So passing touchdowns have been happening against the Bills. The good news is they've gotten some interceptions, 11 interceptions now on the season, 3 in the last 4 games after having none in the second quarter of the season. Sack percentage remains really good, 4th best in the NFL at 9.5%. Pressure rate is coming down noticeably, and this is important. Their pressure rate for the season is 25.5%. After the second quarter, it was 36.3%. So a massive, massive, massive drop in pressure rate. Blitz percentage is at 23.2%. It was at 24.2% through the first 8 games of the season. So what's going well? What are some areas where this pass defense can be better? Well, what's going well is they're still limiting yards. They've held 3 of their last 4 opponents, which is the sample size that we're really focusing in on, the last 4 games. They've held 3 of those 4 opponents under 200 yards passing. That's good. They've gotten 3 interceptions in the last 4 games after having 0 in the previous quarter of the season. They're still getting sacks. These are good things. I think Ed Oliver and Leonard Floyd as pass rushers have really been bright spots for the Buffalo Bills, and they've been pretty consistent throughout the entire season. I think when it comes to the back 7 players, Rasul Douglas has been a great addition to the team. Christian Benford, when he's in the lineup, he shows a high floor and looks like at least a sufficient starting caliber player. Even Dane Jackson, when he's had to play, which is pretty frequently, he's had good moments playing corner for the Bills. And so you feel like with those guys, plus Kyer Elam on injured reserve, that will come back at some point, pretty good situation here at corner post the Trey White injury, right? So there's some benefits short and long term to that. I think they're also doing a good job of masking Tyrel Dodson's coverage limitations. You'll see a play or 2 per game where that shows up, but it can certainly be a whole lot worse. And I think this plan for Sean McDermott to play Jordan Poyer on the second level of the defense, bring in additional safety, and drop out Tyrel Dodson on some of the long and late downs has really worked out. And then you still have Terrel Bernard, who is rock solid in coverage at linebacker. So a lot going well here. Now, where can it be better? Well, you've seen this massive dip in pressure rate. I think this is really important. Like I mentioned, 25.5% pressure rate in the last right now. And then when we checked on this number through the first 8 games, it's 36.3. Now, I don't have that data parsed out for just the last 4 games, but when the season number comes down from 36.3 to 25.5, you know that the last 4 games just has not been good enough when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. And I know we all love sacks, and sacks are still happening at a pretty high clip. It's the pressure and the consistency of the rush that really matters. It's the pressure that forces quarterbacks into bad decisions. It's the pressure that the consistent pressure that potentially messes with the psyche of the quarterback. And I don't think the Bills have done a good enough job of getting consistent pressure. Sacks have been there. Consistent pressure has not. Also, they've given up touchdown passes. Like I mentioned, they gave up 8 touchdown passes in the last 4 games after only giving up 8 touchdown passes in the first 8 games. I think another area where this can be better is play calling. I don't think that the Bills, and when I say the Bills, I mean Sean McDermott. I don't think Sean McDermott, particularly in third downs, end of game situations, has the right stuff, right? He's not pulling the right levers in those moments, particularly in obvious passing situations where it feels like he can get over aggressive with pressure looks. He can get greedy with pressure looks. There's times where maybe he needs to send a pressure look, but he's playing a little bit more soft. I think the defensive play calling, particularly when it comes to pass defense, has really been not good. And then I think hand in hand to that is closing out games. Like, you couldn't get a stop against the Broncos. You couldn't get a stop against the Eagles. You had a chance to get a stop against the Bengals and get the ball back to Josh Allen. You couldn't do it. And so, yeah, they're not giving up a whole lot of yardage and production, but you're also not showing up in the most meaningful moments. And that's what's very, very frustrating. I'm giving this a B, and that's being mindful of the entire picture. But in those high leverage moments, it's probably an F or a D at best. So there's the look at the Bills' pass defense. We're going to focus in on the rush defense and special teams here in just a second. But folks, as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, and there's a ton of different things that you can bet on, including spreads, player props. That's where I've been winning a lot on FanDuel this year. In fact, I hit the over on both Josh Allen's passing and rushing stats last week against the Eagles. You can bet on so much more than just that as well. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, folks, let's talk about this Bills rushing defense. And I think there's been some really positive strides there. And I think maybe the way some people thought about this rush defense earlier in the season is a lot different than it is right now. So the Bills are allowing 117 rushing yards per game. They're allowing 4.7 yards per carry. Now, remember, this is a number that was really high, especially after that Jets game in week 1. The first quarter of the season, yards per carry, 6.3. Second quarter down to 5.1. Third quarter down to 4.7. It's been trending in a very good direction. Missed tackles forced per attempt is 0.17. That's another number that's trending in a good direction. 0.27 Q1, 0.19 Q2, 0.17 Q3. Yards after contact per attempt. Again, trending in the right direction. Still not very good. 4.73 down to 3.59. Q3, they're at 3.03 yards after contact per attempt. Yards before contact per attempt is getting better. 1.53 Q1, 1.21 Q2, 1.18 yards before contact per rush year to date through quarter 3. And that's another number that's trending in the right direction. And the stuff percentage at 47.9. That's 7th best in the entire NFL. That 3.03 yards after contact per attempt, 3rd worst in the NFL. So what's going well here when it comes to the run defense? Where can it be better? I think generally it's been solid. 4 of the last 6 games, and I know that we're focusing on the last 4, but 4 of the last 6, the Bills have held their opponent under 100 rushing yards. The only 2 teams to get over 100 rushing yards against the Bills in the last 6 games are the Broncos and the Eagles. And both of those teams have quarterbacks that will run and scramble. And so they're doing a good job defending running backs. I think that's a big shift in kind of what people thought earlier in the season, where, as I always said, it wasn't necessarily a snap to snap consistency issue. Like, the Bills are not a horrible run defense. They just got gashed for some crazy long runs that skew the numbers. And those have started, they've really normalized throughout the course of the season, particularly over the last 8 games. But you had some moments there, the Jets game, the second half against Miami, when you're up 3 and 4 scores and you're saying, go ahead and run the ball. And they did. And they got some crazy long runs, but they were pretty inconsequential. You know, I think when the Bills have really wanted to bow up and stop the run, they do. I think bright spots in terms of players defending the run. I think Greg Rousseau has been unbelievable defending the run. I think Greg Rousseau comfortably is one of the best run-stopping defensive ends in the entire NFL. I think he's the tone setter up front for the Bills defense when it comes to stopping the run. Ed Oliver continues to be an impact run defender, tackles for loss, penetration, getting off blocks, you know, really kind of bottling things up. And Tyrel Dodson. I know that Tyrel Dodson doesn't necessarily have a ton of fans, but as a downhill player, as a run defender, Dodson's really good. He does a nice job in that capacity. And so I think those have been some bright spots. I think the addition of Linval Joseph has helped this run defense. Obviously, I think Daquan Jones and the way he was playing, he was going to have a monster year. And so Linval Joseph is no Daquan Jones and certainly doesn't play the same volume of snaps. But I think more Linval Joseph and less Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips has been a positive component for this Bills run defense. I think when it comes to second level defenders, I already mentioned Tyrel Dodson. But third level, like Christian Benford, has been very good in run support. Rasul Douglas has been excellent in run support. Jordan Poyer as a downhill safety, he's certainly been an asset in run support. And Taron Johnson, I watch the All-22 every week, and his effort and what he does as a slot corner in fitting the run is really, really, really good. And so those, I think, are some of the bright spots when it comes to the run defense. Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Tyrel Dodson, Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas, Jordan Poyer, Taron Johnson. Now, where can things be better? I think yards after contact. I mean, third worst in the NFL at 3.03 yards after contact per attempt, which is really disappointing because your yards before contact are really solid at 1.18. You got to get people down, and you got to get people down before they gain additional yards. Like, you're conceding too many yards after contact. And some of that is angles, right? You got to take good angles to the ball to put yourself in a square position to get the ball carrier down. The other piece of it is, I think some of the inconsistency that the Bills get with Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips. I don't think those guys are consistent run defenders at all. I don't think they're consistent players at all. And when those guys are playing a high percentage of your snaps and they're being displaced in the run game, and even for Tim Settle, sometimes penetration is just not helpful. And when he gets too far up the field, there can be levels, and you're on uneven levels of your run defense, and it makes it difficult for players to arrive on schedule and arrive square to the football. And so I think that contributes quite a bit to yards after contact and even missed tackles. So I know that Poona Ford's a player that people want to see more of. Me too. But the reality is the Bills tell us every single week that they prefer Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips over Poona Ford. And so if you're expecting Poona Ford to play, I don't know what to tell you. The team has told us loud and clear that unless there's an injury, they're not going to activate him. Now, could he help? Sure. But they're not going to play him. They're not going to play him. They're going to play Settle, and they're going to play Phillips over him, and expecting something else, you're just not paying attention. They're not going to play Poona Ford unless there's an injury. So it's just kind of tough, because I think it's trending in the right direction. I don't think the Bills' run defense has been prohibitive to their success this year, but I'm going to give it a B. Certainly room for it to be better, but overall, I think you can look at components of all three levels of the defense and some real nice standouts and see that the Bills' run defense is at least solid. Not spectacular, certainly not poor, but it's solid, so I'm giving it a grade of a B. All right, we're going to talk situational football and special teams here in just a moment, but stick with me. I got to tell you about Gametime. You should not have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Luckily, Gametime is here, and it is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They've got killer deals on last-minute tickets, all-in prices. I love that. The price you see is the price you pay. They give you a seat image from your view, from your seat, like what you're gonna what you're gonna get into when you get to the venue, because you'll see a picture of what that looks like. A best price guarantee. I mean, simply put, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. The app is awesome. They have flash deals. That's fun. You log into that thing, and sometimes they offer you a flash deal that looks really good. It's easy to navigate, and they also send you the tickets right to your phone, so you don't have to dig through emails to find the tickets. They go right to your phone. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's talk a little situational football and special teams here. The Bills' defensive score percentage, so the percentage of drives that end in points for the opposition, is 33.1%. And that's a number that's gone up throughout the course of the season. Q1, it was 23.8%. Q2, 31%. Q3, 33.1%. So we're not trending in a good direction there. Defensive turnover percentage continues to come down, although they took the ball away a lot more in the last quarter. Only 15.4% through the first three quarters of the season. Q1, it was at 26.2. Q2, 16.7, down to 15.4. Third down percentage, 38.5%. That is very average. You'd love to see that a little bit better, maybe in the low 30s. And then defensive red zone touchdown percentage is 54.1, up from 42.3 in quarter two, a 28% bump there in score percentage for opposing offenses when they get in the red zone. That's actually 18th in the NFL. So what's going well here? I think generally speaking, limiting points, right? The Bills don't give up a ton of points on average. and they're getting turnovers, at least a lot better than they were in the second quarter. So right now, this Bills team is 6th in scoring, 5th in takeaways. They've had 7 takeaways in the last 4 games. In the previous 4, they only had 3 takeaways. So it was good to see the turnovers come back. You guys probably remember me kind of ranting quite a bit about that in the previous quarter of the season where the Bills just couldn't get a takeaway. Well, they got 7 in the last 4 games after 3 in the previous 4. And they've held, during this stretch of games, these last 4, the Bills have held 3 of 4 teams under 25 points. I mean, it's pretty solid. And the one team that scored more than 25 was the Eagles game, and that's the one that you look at and say, man, they should have won that game. So they've limited points pretty well. Where can things be better situationally? Well, you're only average at best on third downs and red zone. And I think especially your red zone defense lately has been just terrible. When teams get down there, they're going to score. Like, I have zero confidence that they're not going to get in the end zone. We talked about it already, like the eight passing touchdowns that you gave up. And it's just like Jalen Hurts in that Eagles game. They got down there, they scored. There was never even a challenge. There was no issues at all. So I think that's where it's been really lacking. So situationally, I give this team a C. And when it comes to takeaways and points, looks good. Situationally, third downs, red zone, not very good. Special teams, let's talk about this. Not been a good year for the Bills on special teams, especially after last year. They were number 1 in the NFL in special teams. This year, not close at all, like underperforming literally everywhere. So punt return average against is 12.4 yards per punt return against you. That is 5th worst in the NFL. Kick return average against you is 20.4. This is where the Bills special teams has been the best relative to the Bills. They cover kickoffs very well. 7th best in the NFL. They only allow 20.4 yards per kick return. That's been pretty solid throughout the course of the season. The Bills don't play for touchbacks. 56.5% of kickoffs are touchbacks, which is 29th in the NFL. So they're one of the teams that still invites returns. And I think based on only allowing an average of 20.4 yards per return, that is a good idea. Field goals, horrible. 78.3% this year for Tyler Bass. That's 29th in the NFL. 29th. Tyler Bass is 29th out of 32 teams in making field goals this year. Fresh off of that big contract extension that pays him among the top 5 highest paid kickers in the NFL. Kick return average for the Bills, only 21.7 yards per return. Punt return average for the Bills, only 8.9 yards per return. So they really haven't gotten any impact explosive returns this season. So what's going well when it comes to the Bills special teams? Kick coverage. Their kickoff team is good. They do a nice job with kickoff team. Tyler Bass puts the ball in good spots. The Bills get down the field and make tackles. It's been good. And I think on returns in general, whether it's kick return or punt return, I think the ball handling and the decision-making has been good. And I think that's important. The bonus are the explosive returns. Step 1 is making good decisions and taking care of the football. And I think that is an area where the Bills special teams has been good when it comes to the return game. Now, where can it be better? Oh, man, everywhere. I mean, they're legitimately bad at punt coverage. I mean, allowing 12.4 yards per return, 5th worst in the NFL. And I think part of that is Sam Martin. Sam Martin's had some really good games this year, but he's had some duds where he's hitting line drives to the middle of the field and not allowing the punt team to get down there and make plays. So they've not been good with punt coverage. Tyler Bass has been among the worst kickers in the NFL this year. I mean, that's not great. You're not getting any impact returns, which again, I think is a bonus. I'm not super concerned about that. But just overall, a down year for the unit, especially when they were number 1 last year. And I know everybody will talk about the investments that the Bills make in special teams, which I don't think are as uncommon as you might think. A lot of teams invest in special teams, but when you do that, you certainly want to see better results than you've had this year. I am grading the Bills special teams as a D year to date for the 2023 Bills. All right, let's talk about the players on the Pro Bowl path and players I'm looking for more out of. Players on the Pro Bowl path. Yesterday when I did this, I said that Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, and Stephon Diggs should be Pro Bowlers, right? I felt pretty good about that. when I flip it over to the other side of the ball, these are more maybe possibly have a case to be made, but I don't sit here and say, yeah, they should be Pro Bowlers. Diggs, Dawkins, and Allen should be Pro Bowlers. On defense, the players I have listed are Ed Oliver, Leonard Floyd, Terrel Bernard, and Rasul Douglas. I think those 4 players have the best claim. I think it wouldn't surprise me if they were. It wouldn't surprise me if they weren't. But I think those are the defensive players that I think have the most compelling case. As for players I'm looking for more out of, I'll start with a non-player. It's Sean McDermott. You gotta pull the levers better, bud. You gotta be better late in games. You gotta give. If you're gonna play defense and ask your defense to win you a game, well, they got to do that sometimes, and they don't. So Sean McDermott, Tim Settle, and Jordan Phillips. In other news, water is wet. Would like to get more out of those players. I mean, especially with Jordan Phillips and some of his antics, going up to that fan on the sideline and kind of being really extra, some boneheaded penalties. Like, I'm done. I'd be happy to not have Jordan Phillips back, like play out the season and then, happy trails, bud. Micah Hyde, I think he's had a bit of a rough stretch there, gave up a couple of touchdowns against Philadelphia. Uncharacteristic. Normally he doesn't get beat with people behind him. That happened twice in that game. And then, of course, special teams wise, Tyler Bass and Sam Martin. You guys got to be better. I mean, you have your moments for sure, but the consistency has just not been there this season. So there you have it. The third quarter report card for the Buffalo Bills on defense and special teams. We did the offense yesterday. And we got a lot more content coming your way before the Bills play the Chiefs next week. I'm going to have 3 different conversations with 3 of my favorite guests, Bruce Nolan, Greg Thompson, Nate Geary, all coming your way early next week. We'll have herd mentality. We'll have crossover preview with the Chiefs. We'll do my full primer and final thoughts, injuries, and predictions. So plenty of content coming your way on Locked On Bills as we get through the bye week and we get ready for a stretch run where the Bills, while it feels unlikely, they still got a reasonable chance to win some games. The teams that are in their way are not very good. They don't have very good quarterbacks. The one team that does have a good quarterback, he's a rookie, and that team has some chinks in the armor and some injuries in Houston. So, go out there and scratch and claw and see if you can do it. And could you imagine if the Bills get in and now you're one of these division winning teams, and let's assume the division winning teams are the Chiefs, Dolphins, Ravens, and Jaguars. And you're thinking, wow, we can host Cleveland, we can host Pittsburgh, we can host Houston or Denver. Nah, you got to deal with the Bills. Like, the Bills have a real chance to blow the whole damn thing up if they can get in. But they got to get in. And we spent some time here over the last couple of days focusing in on what's going well, what's not going well, and hopefully that will provide a nice foundation for what needs to actually be different over these final 5 games for the Bills to get in there and be a wrecking ball, because I think they can be. And we know the Bills can beat anybody. They just went to Philadelphia, who I think is the best team in the league. We went into their place and outplayed them, but couldn't do the right things at the right times to win the game. So this Bills team has the capacity. Can they do it? Can their head coach do the right things to give them a chance to win some of these football games? So there you have it. All right, folks, this has been fun. Don't miss all the great content that's coming up. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.